Looking at all the snow that's out there right now, we know when that melts, that's going to cause a pretty significant rise on the Mississippi River.
Melts it faster, which sends a big slug of water down the river. That's what creates trouble.
Every foot that we build in permanent flood control is one less foot that we have to put up on a temporary basis if we see the river start to rise.
Can't get any worse than it did that first. We got through that, right?
Spring is the time of severe storms, some of which dump significant amounts of rainfall.
It's life on the Mississippi River. This is the way it goes.
Flood walls and gates continue to rise in the city of Cedar Rapids, an effort to protect the city from what happened 15 years ago. I'm meteorologist Nick Stewart.
And I'm meteorologist Kopelman. We're here in the Czech Village where water poured into homes and businesses during the devastating record floods of 2008.
And we're going to go in depth to take a look at how those that are living along area rivers are going to be dealing with the probability of flooding this spring.
And we begin with this multi-million-dollar flood defense that means everything to those that are now sitting behind it.
They couldn't tell us how high the water was going to be.
We didn't think it would get that deep.
Two downtown Cedar Rapids business owners tried to prepare for the rising water on the Cedar River, forced to leave their buildings ahead of the historic crest 15 years ago.
It filled our restaurants with about 5.5 feet of water.
And as it was, we had 8.5 feet of water in the bakery.
That's because the river rose 11 feet higher than it ever had before.
Actually, we lost the neighborhood for the most part, with the exception of our main street here.
Nobody had flood insurance down there.
Now the city is working to hold the waters back with a $750 million defense project.
It's being designed to protect to the 2008 flood level.
That level, 31.12 feet, impacted 10 square miles of the city, displaced 10,000 residents, and flooded nearly 8,000 buildings and homes.
The entire system is 38,000 linear feet. We've completed almost 30% of the length of the system so far. Some of the barriers are utilities that might be in the corridor. So we have to address all of those issues, everything that's underground when we're trying to build walls and levees.
While there is still work left to do, the protection in place now is already beneficial.
Every foot that we build in permanent flood control is one less foot that we have to put up on a temporary basis if we see the river start to rise.
The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has committed to having the east side of the river flood protection complete by the end of 2026. The city is hoping to follow close behind on the west side.
What's really fantastic is as we build the system, we're seeing so much investment and redevelopment on both sides of the river.
And as the city continues its regrowth, there are some businesses that decided to stay.
As long as we own the bakery, it'll always be here.
While others were unable to take the risk again.
We decided at that time it was just too much of a financial obligation that we could not afford.
However, those flood walls, levees, and gates going up around town seem to be worth the wait for those still on the Cedar.
It's great to know that there'll be something long-term, because it's been needed for a long time.
Here on the east side of Cedar Lake, everything is quiet besides the humming of the Interstate 380 traffic. Folks are enjoying their day out here, but on the other side of the lake, well, that's where a lot of work is going on linking this area into the city's flood protection system. From the birds to the water pumps, plans are underway to improve flood protection around Cedar Lake.
This project is extremely important because it's a very difficult one to try to build temporary HESCO barriers.
The solution? Build a levee that separates the Cedar River and Cedar Lake, which will protect businesses in the area during times of flooding. But this is no easy task.
We've currently put an earthen barrier between where the levee would go and the rest of the lake. We call the cofferdam, so that you can dewater that 100-foot area at the west edge of the lake.
Now, with the power of the Skyview drone, we can actually show you what's going on the other side of the lake. There's that cofferdam that has been built to separate the main portion of Cedar Lake, where the main part of the water is, and then the area that is going to be drained. Now, 30 different pumps are going to be pumping that water out of this area located along the cofferdam and the shoreline of Cedar Lake. All of that water will be sent underground and eventually discharged into the Cedar River. And once that area dries out right here, that's when crews are going to be able to go in there, build up that levee that's going to become the west side bank of the Cedar Lake. However, when it came to the discharging of the groundwater, the original location was going to be at McLeod Run, but a test of the pumping process found there was levels of ammonia coming out of the groundwater, and talks with the Iowa DNR changed the discharge location to the Cedar River to help minimize any water quality impacts.
We would have liked to have discharged it into the McLeod Run. However, it was felt there's not enough flow there to mix it as well, so we need to extend that pipeline out to the river.
That discharge will be located downstream of any wells that pull in water for the city's system, and while the process will be long and difficult at times, it's a step in the right direction for possible long-term restoration plans at Cedar Lake.
As flood events come and go and water levels rise and fall, cities are trying to build mitigation efforts to help alleviate the stresses of those flood events, but a team of researchers here at the Iowa Flood Center are also looking into ways to help alleviate the flooding stresses further upstream.
We have these big flood control reservoirs like Coralville and Saylorville and Red Rock, but the floods are still happening.
And unfortunately, with our ever-changing climate, large rain events still occur for us here in eastern Iowa, and our current reservoir systems just aren't big enough to contain it all.
Unfortunately, building big reservoirs like Coralville, they're just way too expensive now. Lots of ecological damage that they do that we weren't really necessarily aware of when they built those projects back in the 30s.
After the flood of 2008, the Iowa Flood Center led an effort called the Iowa Watersheds Project from 2010 to 2016, which was then expanded to the Iowa Watershed Approach from 2016 to 2021. Overall, these efforts looked at flood mitigation techniques to slow the movement of smaller bodies of water, such as creeks and streams. One of the more effective techniques uses small embankment ponds to hold excess rainfall, releasing it back to the streams at a much slower rate. The projects originally studied and deployed these flood mitigation systems on the Beaver Creek, Otter Creek, South Request Creek, and Soap Creek.
My work kind of picks up a lot of the findings from that project. So I look at distributed storage, utilizing like farm ponds, putting gated outlets on them, and then slowing the water down in those ponds so that the peak timing of the flow, we can control that so that it doesn't all hit at once.
And while the ponds themselves were found to be rather effective, especially on the local scale, Raleigh's work looks at new ways to improve on the systems that are already in place put forward by the Iowa Watersheds projects.
So right now the ponds are operating in what we call passive operations, so that's no gates. So as it fills up, it kind of works like your bathtub. The more water in there, the faster the water comes out.
It was found that these pond systems reduced flood peaks between about 30 to 40%, but with those reduced peaks came with a bit of a trade-off. Water levels remained a bit higher for longer periods of time.
And then the real benefit of the active operation is after the peak is gone. So we're able to store water in the ponds and reduce downstream flows even more on top of not having the ponds or having this passive operation. And what that does is it leaves extra room for the next storm.
And when it comes to that next storm, advancements in weather and hydrological forecasting can give those a bigger heads up for what's to come.
And if we had those types of lead times with these ponds, in theory, when the weather's dry and the sun's out, you could open up the gates and let the water out early and buy yourself some more room within the ponds.
In the end, these efforts should lead to reduced flooding impacts overall, or at least increase the time communities can prepare for the next flooding event.
We're unfortunately familiar with flooding in eastern Iowa, but what does it mean when a river floods?
The rainfall results in runoff, and then that runoff finds its way into the streams and rivers. Sometimes there is just too much.
Each river has its own defined flood stage. That's when a rise in water begins to threaten lives, property, or commerce. Here in Cedar Rapids, that level starts at 12 feet, and that's when water begins to affect Osborne Park and lower sections of Otis Road. Major flood stage starts at 16 feet, and water begins to affect Ellis Road, the Boat Harbor, and some homes in Palo. Major flooding is when there is an extensive inundation of structures and road. This is usually when significant evacuations begin to happen and property needs to move to higher levels. This is a time of year when river flooding is most likely due to a combination of snowmelt and springtime thunderstorms.
Here in Iowa, it doesn't take very long. It takes maybe a couple of weeks of stormy weather and rainfall to flip.
This is especially the case when the ground is saturated, like a soggy sponge that can't hold any more. That water goes straight into our river system.
A thick snowpack at the headwaters of the mighty Mississippi River is rapidly melting due to this very unusual April of warmth. Coming up on Rising Waters, we'll talk about the impact this will likely have on the river and when the crest will occur.
Iowa's News Now is ready when severe weather hits. The WeatherFirst Road Warrior protects you, tracking Iowa weather in real time.
There's a funnel cloud right over your town.
Live video as the storm progresses.
It looks like it's trying to plant a big pounding it.
Capturing every angle on all your screens.
That's dust. All right, confirmed tornado. You can see dust now. Confirmed tornado.
You just watched a tornado form live on the air.
70 years of innovative coverage. The WeatherFirst Road Warrior, only on Iowa's News Now.
Near the Twin Cities, the National Weather Service keeps a very close eye on the Mississippi River, watching many factors. The biggest concern so far this year is the fact that snow still covers the ground, especially off to the north, near the headwaters of the Mississippi. The deeper, though, we get to the month of April.
At what point do we start getting exponentially concerned, but the snowpack's still kind of lingering?
Yeah, that's happening right now.
Forecasters at the North Central River Forecast Center continue to watch the evolving river conditions in the upper Midwest as a thick snowpack containing a lot of water remains in place through the first week of April. This snowpack contains 4 to as much as 8 inches of water built up during the course of the winter season.
The storm tracks seem to be repeatedly from the Dakotas across Minnesota into northern Wisconsin. So we saw storm system upon storm system just keep bringing more and more snow to that area.
Part of the reason for major flooding forecast downstream of the Mississippi River from here in the Twin Cities is the fact that right here, we just experienced the second snowiest season on record. 89.7 inches fell, less than 2 inches away from the all-time record.
And as that continues to flow downstream, we're going to be looking at several weeks to a month period of really elevated high water along the Mississippi. So any significant rainfall we get through the rest of April and into early May, the river's already high. So we add all that additional tributary rainfall that could really fall on top of an already high river.
Right here on Iowa's News Now, confirmed tornado. An active winter is being followed by an active spring, with several days of severe weather and heavy rain already taking place in the state of Iowa. With an active period of weather forecast to continue through April, hydrologists watching the river are worried heavy rainfall may coincide with a crest, the worst combination.
It's a busy time. It really, we watch the flood stage pretty good.
In Dubuque, businesses along the Mississippi are preparing for the rise in water. At Yardarm Bar and Grill in the Dubuque Marina, the opening of the season comes with the likelihood of increasing water levels.
The docks move with all that water coming up. Everything flexes and it breaks, and metal it sometimes can't handle that, fast of a rise in water.
A crest near major flood stage, which is the current expectation, won't inundate the main building. However, this could cause a stoppage of boat traffic on the river, hurting business.
So this is the water content.
Back at the River Forecast Center, the upcoming weeks will be filled with constant monitoring of the river levels, melting snow, and every storm system that may drop rain or snow in the region. The key point this spring for those living along and operating on area rivers is to keep checking river forecast frequently, as things can change quickly.
It's all about timing. If you get the crest on a tributary comes in at the same time the crest is happening on the Mississippi itself, that just magnifies everything and makes it even higher. So it's all about timing.
And this spring, several weeks of high water are looking likely on the Mississippi River. Coming up on Rising Waters, we'll talk about the impact to commercial traffic, the impact to your wallet, and how the U.S. Coast Guard is keeping the river safe.
Iowa's News Now's cameras first switched on 70 years ago.
This is a great day for us.
Ever since then, our pioneering news team has been dedicated to you.
Can I ask you guys what you're dumping?
Capturing the historic moments.
This is incredible rotation with the storm right now.
That define what it means to be an Iowan.
Man, we get hit when we get to work, don't we?
Serving you for 70 years and committed to serving you for the next 70. Always choose Iowa's News Now.
Every spring, there's a delicate balance of barge traffic moving up and down the mighty Mississippi River, transporting critical agricultural goods. But a flood this spring, on top of a drought last autumn, could have ripple effects on the agricultural economy.
The barge you see coming into our harbor is loaded with dry granular fertilizer.
Barge traffic on the Mississippi River is off to a fast start in 2023 with the threat of high water looming by mid-April. At Logistics Park Dubuque, a transportation hub for regional farmers, the early season has been near perfect for getting material in and out of barges. Last autumn, commercial river traffic came to a near standstill for a period of time as barges were hitting the ground due to low water downstream of Dubuque. This spring, the outlook of high water may lead to the opposite problem, but springtime hiccups can be easier to deal with than those in the autumn.
If you have a problem in fall season, that same spring you didn't know it was coming. You didn't sort of overstock as a grower or as a co-op. So if I had my choice, yeah, I'd rather have a difficult spring season in the hopes that we can make up for it in the fall.
The Mississippi is the most cost-effective solution for farmers shipping out product and bringing in fertilizer. About 500 million tons of cargo are transported yearly on the river. A single barge can carry the load of 60 trucks, and you can strap 15 together in a single tow. If this quiet form of transportation stops, even briefly, everyone will feel the impact financially as costs go up.
You can't get barges in, you can't get barges out, there aren't empties to load, product starts stopping in places where it shouldn't. So you just get delays and people have to either use other modes of transportation, which aren't as efficient as the barge, or product just sits. But if it happens, our customers will be watching out for it. We'll be working with them, trying to figure out how we do things in different ways.
Heading into mid-April, Mississippi River traffic continues to flow, but the river also continues to slowly rise. The river is forecast to move into flood stage at 17 feet Tuesday, April 18th, and the probability of reaching major flood stage of 21.5 feet is greater than 50% by the end of the month.
Where are maybe some of the maxes of just how high the water can go before kind of your operations are interrupted?
For us, anything above 19, it starts to impact our operations fairly severely.
6 months ago, we're talking about drought in the south, whether that would carry up north. Now we're looking at the exact opposite. It's just life on the river.
And commercial traffic on the Mississippi River may be impacted due to high water, but the U.S. Coast Guard is doing everything that they can to not only keep the river open as long as it can be, but also make sure that the channel is clearly marked. The U.S. Coast Guard Wyaconda, based in Dubuque, prepares another load of navigation markers. The buoy tender has already had a busy spring, making a run towards the Twin Cities and back to help guide traffic around hazards on the northern Mississippi River.
The Wyaconda itself is responsible for over 1,600 floating aids to navigation that we call buoys in the river. That's the highest buoy density of any Coast Guard buoy tender in the Coast Guard.
The buoys help those on the river navigate around everyday geographical hazards, but as the water is forecast to rise, new dangers will be present on the Mississippi, and this could cause restrictions to commercial traffic like barges, including reduced tow sizes and horsepower restrictions as river navigation gets more hazardous.
High currents are obviously our major concern. Even the most experienced boaters can be overtaken by high currents. I would also add that as river levels go up, they pick up debris with them. Be cognizant of logs and trees that are floating down the river. A collision with one of those can ruin your day at the very least, or become a deadly situation at the very worst.
For those considering hitting the water to enjoy the warmer weather when the water is running higher than normal, there's one universal tip that can prevent you from becoming a statistic.
Life jackets save lives, so wear your life jacket.
And we've shown you what cities are doing here in eastern Iowa to mitigate flooding for the future. But coming up after the break, we're going to take a look at the men and women just like you and me who go into action when flooding occurs and how they are saving lives.
Eastern Iowa, you made the Iowa's News Now Fairway Spring to Action food drive a huge success.
We are certainly going to be collecting more of these non-perishable food items.
We got a good little smorgasbord of food and things being collected.
Together, we collected 1,400 pounds of food.
So far today, we've already filled one full cardboard crate.
I really just appreciate the people that have come out to bring food.
Keep those donations coming. Visit haycap.org. The Fairway Spring to Action food drive from Upper Iowa University and Iowa's News Now.
Depending on where you live, flooding is sometimes unavoidable, and when the waters begin to rise, it's people just like you and me who spring into action to help. The sweet sound of water. It's amazing how it can go from a scene like this to this. And when rivers are no longer in their banks, it's firefighters like Captain Tina Humston of the North Liberty Fire Department who are ready to help.
So we are set up to provide water rescue. We have a couple different pieces of equipment.
That equipment, essential in giving rescue workers the best chance to help people in a water rescue. From the main boat to the life jackets and wetsuits, everything has a purpose. And while having the equipment is great, the training is key. And that's why the North Liberty Fire Department gets out on the water at least once per year to practice all different types of water rescues.
As far as training when we're out there, we have water rescue ropes. We practice actually rope throwing multiple times, and then putting on the water rescue suits very quickly, and then going out into the water and effecting the rescue.
And this training saves lives. According to NOAA, flood-related deaths are only second behind heat-related deaths over the last 30 years. And a piece of equipment helping give firefighters more of an upper hand during flood rescues is an RDC, or Rapid Deployment Craft. This inflatable boat allows rescuers to reach places they normally couldn't with a regular boat during flooding situations.
And that is a little bit more mobile than a boat. Obviously, we don't need a boat ramp to put that in the water.
And no matter what, even if you're in the middle of an interview,
Yes, I gotta go.
These men and women will come running or swimming to your rescue.
Many people moved their homes and businesses away from the river after the devastating 2008 flood. But one staple in Czech Village remains, even after being filled with over 8 feet of water.
I guess we'll just start with your experience with the 2008 flood.
Yeah. Well, when they told us a couple of days ahead that there was going to be a flood, but they couldn't tell us how high the water was going to be. So we really didn't know how much to prepare for. So what we did was we put everything up in the bakery about 2 or 3 feet. I can kind of see it sticks out a little bit from the original plaster up there because I knew the sheetrock wouldn't hold that up.
And you said it was too...
Just a couple of inches, just a couple of inches below the
painting?
picture, yeah. Yeah, so the water was like 8.5 feet down.
Yeah, over our heads.
Oh yeah. It looked like somebody had taken an egg beater in here. Everything was all beat up and churned up and a mess, you know.
Did you feel a lot of the community?
Oh man, yeah, a lot of people came through and helped out. You know, people that we... It's really hard to talk about. People came and helped that we didn't even know. You know, total strangers came in and helped us clean up. It was great. After getting through that first one, it was like, it can't get any worse than that. So, you know, whatever, throw whatever you want to at us, you know. I mean, it's not going to get any worse than it was.
As we approach the 15-year anniversary of the historic floods of 2008, it's important to remember that not every year is the same, but it is important to prepare.
And of course, with a changing climate getting wetter and warmer, sometimes those extremes are getting more difficult to forecast. We want to keep an eye on those changing forecasts at iowasnewsnow.com.
And thank you for watching on behalf of the WeatherFirst team and Iowa's News Now.